My name is Claire G. Bergman, and I was 30 years old when my family let me arrive, fully packed for a vacation they had never intended to take me on. I pulled into my parents' driveway with sunscreen already on, music playing, and my duffel bag sitting in the passenger seat. My mother opened the door and said, "You were never actually on the guest list. We figured you would be fine alone." At first, I thought she was joking. Then I saw the luggage lined up behind her. My father's travel folder sat on the hallway table. Sarah and her husband Daniel were laughing together in the living room. A cooler, passports, and sun hats were stacked near the stairs. Nobody looked surprised to see me. They only looked inconvenienced. The trip had been discussed since spring. Hawaii. 5 days in a villa. The first family vacation in years. It was supposed to be my parents, Sarah, Daniel, and me. The night before our flight, Mom told me to sleep at their house because we had an early departure. I had even bought snacks for everyone. "What are you talking about?" I asked. Mom sighed as though I were making the situation harder. "Sarah has had a difficult few months. She asked if this trip could be about her and Daniel. No tension. No arguments. You two have not been getting along, and we agreed she deserved something peaceful. They had excluded me as a gift to my sister." I looked over Mom's shoulder. Dad stood in the kitchen with his back turned, pretending to stir an empty pot. Sarah never looked away from her phone. Daniel glanced toward me once, then lowered his eyes. Nobody defended me. Nobody admitted they had spent months deliberately misleading me. So I smiled. "All right," I said. Then I returned to my car and drove away. I sat at the end of the street for several minutes, too embarrassed to cry. The warning signs replayed in my mind. "We're still confirming things. We'll send the flight information later. Don't worry about booking anything yet." I had mistaken calculated vagueness for disorganization. At 10:47 that night, my phone vibrated. Mom had sent a payment request for $5,100. The note read, "Your share of flights and villa." I stared at it until I laughed. They did not want my presence. They still wanted my money. I sent $1 with a message. "You'll have a surprise." Then I opened my laptop. I found the flight I suspected they were taking. There were still several seats available. I booked one on the same plane. Next, I searched for accommodation. Their shared resort villa was comfortable but crowded and far from the private section of the beach. 20 minutes north, I found a luxury oceanfront cabana with an infinity pool, private entrance, personal driver, and a deck opening directly onto the sand. I booked all 5 nights under our family surname. I added an early check-in request and asked for champagne to be waiting. I did not want revenge. I wanted peace too. Mine simply came with a better view. The following morning, I reached the airport early and kept my hood up as I waited near the gate. My family stood several rows away. Dad carried his paper travel folder like everything depended on it. Mom checked her watch repeatedly. Sarah laughed with Daniel, a designer neck pillow hanging from her luggage. I waited until the final boarding call. While they argued with a gate agent over a window seat, I walked directly past them. Nobody noticed. I kept my head down throughout the flight. They sat several rows ahead, laughing as though they had successfully removed the one person capable of ruining their happiness. When we landed, I let them leave first. In the arrivals area, a driver held a sign reading, "Bergman Family." He took my luggage and led me to a black SUV stocked with chilled towels and fresh fruit. At the private estate, the staff greeted me warmly. "Welcome, Miss Bergman. Your cabana is ready. Will the rest of your party be joining you?" I looked toward the ocean. Not this time. My cabana had its own infinity pool, a hammock between 2 palm trees, and a private path to the beach. That evening, I walked far enough down the shoreline to see my family arriving at their crowded resort. They had no idea I was already on the island. By morning, they would learn that the best reservation under their surname had been claimed hours earlier. They had expected me to stay home alone. Instead, They were about to discover that exclusion works both ways. The first morning in Hawaii felt unreal. The ocean was calm enough to look painted. Warm wind drifted through the palms, and breakfast arrived on my deck before I had even finished my coffee. For the first time in years, nobody expected anything from me. No phone calls, no favors, no emotional negotiations disguised as family conversations. At exactly 9:04 a.m., my phone buzzed. "Mom, did you do something with our reservation?" I smiled at the screen and put it face down. 5 minutes later, Sarah texted, "We need to talk. Something's wrong with the villa." Then came another message, "Call me immediately." I ignored both. What happened was exactly what I expected. When my family arrived at their resort, they checked in under our last name, only to discover that the premium beachfront reservation had already been claimed hours earlier. The receptionist politely explained that a guest from the Bergman family had already completed VIP check-in. Since the luxury cabana was occupied, the only available accommodation was a much smaller villa farther from the beach. No oceanfront deck, no private pool, no welcome package, no upgrades. Just a standard family room squeezed between several noisy vacation groups. They were furious. Around noon, I finally answered one of Dad's calls. "Claire," he snapped the second I picked up. "Did you book something under our family name?" I did. "Why?" I leaned back in the lounge chair and looked toward the water. "I figured you'd be fine without me." Silence. Then the line went dead. I returned to my book. That afternoon I ordered far too much food simply because I could. Fresh seafood. Fruit I could not pronounce. Frozen drinks decorated with tiny orchids. At breakfast I had met two travelers, Cassie and Joy. Their own vacation plans had collapsed after a bachelorette party was cancelled, so they had decided to enjoy the island together anyway. We ended up talking for nearly 2 hours. Conversation with them felt effortless. Nobody asked what I could provide. Nobody expected me to solve anything. They only wanted good company. By sunset, we were laughing beside the infinity pool as if we had known each other for years. The following morning, I booked a snorkeling excursion. While I floated above coral reefs surrounded by tropical fish, my family spent the day arguing with hotel management, trying unsuccessfully to upgrade their room. Peak travel season had filled nearly every luxury property on the island. They were stuck. Late that afternoon, I walked along a public beach path carrying sandals in one hand. That was when I saw them. Sarah noticed me first. She stopped walking so suddenly that Daniel almost bumped into her. She looked exhausted. Her shoulders were tense, her face already sunburned despite the expensive hat she wore, and she stared at me as though I had appeared out of thin air. I smiled politely. She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. I simply continued walking. Behind me, I heard Mom whisper something. Nobody followed. That evening, Cassie and Joy joined me again. We watched the sunset from the deck, listened to music, and talked long after darkness settled over the ocean. There was nothing romantic about it, only easy conversation and genuine laughter. I realized how unusual that felt. The third morning, someone knocked on my cabana door. A resort employee handed me an envelope. "A guest asked us to deliver this." Inside was a single sheet of resort stationery. 3 sentences, written in Sarah's handwriting. "This is beyond petty. We're embarrassed for you. You've ruined the trip." No greeting, no signature, no acknowledgement that she had excluded me before I ever booked anything. I folded the paper neatly and tucked it beneath my drink. It was strange. Not because she was angry, because she genuinely believed I had wronged her by refusing to disappear quietly. That afternoon, Cassie, Joy, and I joined a small reef tour run by a retired marine biologist. We swam beside sea turtles, drifted through crystal clear water, and drank fresh coconut juice while floating beneath the Hawaiian sun. At one point, Cassie stretched across the deck and sighed. "Is this what life is supposed to feel like?" I looked across the endless water. For the first time in years, maybe it was. Near the end of the trip, Joy snapped a photograph of the 3 of us laughing together. She posted it online without thinking much about it. Neither did I. 2 hours later, my phone exploded. Dad called 5 times. Then came his text. "Delete that photo, you're humiliating this family." Sarah followed. "So, this is your plan? Make us look ridiculous?" Then Mom, "We have supported you for years. We never treated you differently. I don't know what happened to you, but this is cruel." I read that message twice. Supported me. The words echoed in my head. Had they? Or had they simply expected me to keep shrinking until there was nothing left except what I could give them? That evening, Cassie and Joy went into town to hear live music. I stayed behind. The beach was nearly empty. As I walked near the edge of the neighboring resort, I noticed someone sitting alone on a stone wall overlooking the water. Daniel, Sarah's husband. He looked over as I approached. Instead of pretending not to recognize me, he lifted his beer slightly. I hesitated before sitting several feet away. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, Daniel broke the silence. "They're falling apart." I looked toward the waves. I noticed. "Your mom cried this morning. Sarah's been furious ever since she saw you." He paused. "She never expected you to come." I figured. "She definitely didn't expect you to enjoy yourself." I looked at him. Was leaving me behind her idea? Daniel stared at the ocean for several seconds before answering. "Yes." The word landed quietly. My parents agreed because they thought it would avoid another argument. Another argument. As though removing me from the vacation had somehow been the peaceful option. Daniel sighed. "I probably shouldn't be telling you this. But you're telling me anyway. You deserve to know." The tide rolled toward our feet before pulling back again. When I stood to leave, Daniel spoke one final time. "They're going to come after you when we get home." I know. Back at my cabana, Cassie and Joy had fallen asleep on the outdoor daybed beneath a blanket, soft music still playing from someone's phone. I sat beside the pool with a bottle of water and looked toward the dark ocean. For the first time in my life, I was no longer trying to earn a place in my own family. And somehow, that felt more peaceful than finally getting one. The flight home was quieter than the one that brought us to Hawaii. We were on the same plane again, which felt less like coincidence and more like a final test. I boarded before them, took a window seat near the back, and put on noise-canceling headphones. When my family entered, they looked exhausted. My parents walked several feet apart. Sarah stared straight ahead. Daniel carried both bags and said nothing. Nobody looked like they had returned from paradise. I watched the clouds outside until we landed. At baggage claim, Sarah glanced toward me once. Mom did too. Nobody approached. 2 days later, the retaliation began. Mom texted first. "We have decided to pause communication. Emotions are high, and you crossed a serious line." Dad followed. "We hope you reflect on the damage you caused." Then another payment request arrived. $15,100. The note read, "Flights, villa, and additional expenses." I denied it. They sent it again. I denied it again and blocked both of them. Sarah chose a different method. She texted constantly. "Hope your stunt was worth it. You think this made you look strong? You have always been selfish. Do not expect this to disappear." I never replied. She moved on to voice messages, sometimes 3 or 4 in a row. I deleted them without listening. At work, people asked how Hawaii had been. "Quiet," I said. "Exactly what I needed." That was the truth. A week after returning, Dad emailed me with the subject line, "Family boundaries going forward." I archived it unopened. Whatever boundary they believed I had crossed, I was no longer interested in defending myself to people who had erased me first. By the end of the month, I deleted the family group chat and removed every shared calendar event. Birthdays, anniversaries, holiday dinners. The silence afterward did not feel empty. It felt clean. 3 months passed. No family dinners. No calls from Mom. No awkward invitations designed to make me apologize without anyone admitting what they had done. Sarah continued sending occasional messages. You should speak to Mom. This went too far, Claire. Still playing the victim? You abandoned us. She never mentioned that they had excluded me first. In her version of the story, my crime was refusing to accept humiliation quietly. Eventually, I muted her. Then I blocked her. Not because I hated her, because she did not want a conversation. She wanted access to my guilt. In November, I saw Daniel at a gas station near my apartment. He recognized me immediately and gave a small nod. Neither of us spoke. I remembered his warning on the beach, but I did not stop him. He had told me the truth once, and perhaps that was all he was capable of giving. Several days later, a handwritten letter arrived from Mom. She said she did not understand where my anger came from. She wrote that I had created an ugly division in the family, and that forgiveness remained possible if I admitted my role. I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer. That was the last time they contacted me for months. Christmas came. Then, my birthday. I spent both with friends from work. There was no forced conversation, no careful effort to avoid upsetting Sarah, no feeling that I had been invited only because excluding me publicly would have looked bad. I still thought about Hawaii, not the room mix-up or the anger on Sarah's face. I remembered the first morning. The ocean was calm. Breakfast sat untouched beside me. Nobody wanted anything. That was when I realized peace did not need their approval. Almost a year passed. I moved closer to the coast, accepted more freelance work, and built routines that belonged entirely to me. I also met Liam Carter at a gallery opening. He was thoughtful, patient, and never treated silence like something that needed to be filled. We began seeing each other without forcing labels or dragging our pasts into every conversation. For the first time, my life had space around it. Then, one Tuesday night at 8:30, someone knocked on my door. I was not expecting anyone. When I opened it, Sarah stood on the other side. She looked older somehow. Her hair was tied back carelessly, and she wore an old windbreaker I remembered from college. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Then she said, "Mom is in the hospital." My body reacted before my mind did. What happened? "Heart attack. Mild, according to the doctors. She is going to recover." I gripped the edge of the door. Sarah continued, "She asked for you." I did not answer. "She said your name before mine, before Dad's." Then Sarah handed me a folded piece of paper. It contained one line. "If I was wrong, I am sorry. I love you either way." No long explanation. No accusation. No demand. Sarah looked at me. "She is afraid you will not come. Not because you are angry, because she thinks you may have actually moved on." It was the most honest thing Sarah had said to me in years. For one moment, something shifted inside me. Not forgiveness, not surrender, just the smallest crack in the wall. Sarah turned and walked away without asking for an answer. I closed the door and sat alone in the dark, holding the note. Liam texted later. "Do you need me?" I stared at the message before replying. "Not tonight. Something complicated happened." I did not go to the hospital. I did not call, but I did not throw the note away either. For now, keeping it was the only answer I was ready to give. For 3 days, the note remained on my kitchen table. I passed it every morning while making coffee. Every evening, I found myself unfolding it, reading the same sentence, and placing it back exactly where it had been. "If I was wrong, I am sorry. I love you either way." It was not a complete apology. It did not name the exclusion, the payment demands, or the months of silence, but it was the first time my mother had admitted the possibility that she might have been wrong. Liam did not pressure me. When I finally told him what had happened, he listened without interrupting. "Do you want to see her?" he asked. "I don't know. That is allowed." "What if she dies before I decide?" His expression softened. "Then make the decision you can live with, not the one guilt makes for you." The following morning I drove to the hospital. I sat in the parking lot for nearly 20 minutes before entering. The corridor smelled of disinfectant and burnt coffee. My footsteps sounded too loud as I approached Mom's room. Sarah stood near the doorway. She looked surprised to see me, but she did not smile. "Dad went home to shower," she said. "She's awake." I nodded. Sarah stepped aside. Mom looked smaller in the hospital bed. A monitor blinked beside her, and an oxygen tube rested beneath her nose. When she saw me, her eyes filled with tears. "You came." I did. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then she reached toward me. I did not take her hand immediately. "Why did you leave me out?" I asked. Her face tightened. "Claire, no, I need the truth." She looked toward the window. "We thought Sarah needed the trip more." "That does not explain lying to me for months. We were afraid you would react badly. So you humiliated me at the door instead?" Tears slipped down her cheeks. "We handled it terribly. You asked me to pay afterward. I know. You blamed me when I refused. I know." The words were quiet, but this time they did not come with excuses. Mom swallowed. "I convinced myself that keeping Sarah calm was the same as protecting the family. You were always stronger. I thought you would recover." "You did not think I was strong. You thought I was easier to hurt." She closed her eyes. The monitor continued its steady rhythm. When she looked at me again, something in her expression had changed. "You are right. I had imagined hearing those words for nearly a year. They did not erase anything, but they mattered." "I am sorry," she said. "Not because I am sick. Not because I am scared. I am sorry because we treated you like your feelings were less important." I sat in the chair beside her bed. "I cannot return to how things were. I know. I am not apologizing for Hawaii. You should not. And I will not rebuild this family by pretending nothing happened." Mom nodded. "If you ever let us try, we will have to do it differently." Sarah remained outside the room. When I left, she was leaning against the wall. "How is she?" I asked. "Relieved." I started walking away. "Claire," Sarah called. I stopped. She looked down at her hands. "It was my idea." "I know. Daniel told you." "Yes." She nodded slowly. "I wanted one trip where I did not feel compared to you." I stared at her. "You solved that by making sure I did not exist." Her eyes filled with tears. I was jealous. It was the first honest explanation she had ever given me. "You always seemed more independent, more interesting. Mom and Dad listened when you spoke, even when they disagreed. I thought if you were not there, I could finally feel important. And when I showed up, I felt exposed." She wiped her face. "I kept attacking you because admitting what I had done would mean admitting you were not the problem." I did not hug her. I did not forgive her. But I said, "That is the first real thing you have said to me." Then I left. Recovery did not transform us overnight. Mom and I began with short phone calls. Sarah sent one apology and stopped demanding a response. Dad remained defensive longer, but eventually admitted that silence had been easier than challenging Sarah or Mom. I kept my distance. Peace had taught me not to confuse access with reconciliation. Liam stayed beside me without taking control of the process. Months later, when I introduced him to Mom, she treated him warmly but carefully, as though she understood that one careless comment could close the door again. We never became the family we had pretended to be before Hawaii. We became something more honest, smaller, slower, bounded by consequences. I still kept Mom's note in the drawer beside my bed. Not because it fixed everything, because it marked the first moment someone in my family stopped asking me to disappear and finally admitted that leaving me behind had been wrong. Hawaii was never really about the villa. It was about learning that I did not need to beg for a place where I was tolerated. I could build a life where I was wanted. And when my family eventually asked to enter that life again, they did not receive automatic access. They had to knock. This time, I decided whether to open the door.